I never thought my life would shrink into the cold, polished floor of that Brooklyn townhouse. But that night, as the storm winds pressed against the windows and the Manhattan skyline flickered in the distance, I felt everything collapse into one single moment of terror. Cole stood above me, jaw clenched so tight the veins on his neck bulged. In my arms, my 5-month-old son whimpered, sensing something was horribly wrong. I could barely breathe under the weight of my own fear, my 6-month belly tightening like a knot ready to snap. Ava Monroe, his flawless 23-year-old mistress, stood behind him, still in her gym leggings, smelling of expensive perfume and sweat. She glanced at me the way someone might look at dirt stuck to their shoe. And the worst part? She didn't even seem nervous. It was as if Cole had convinced her that hurting me was some kind of twisted proof of loyalty. Maybe he had. He always knew how to bend people. I learned that too late. "Sign the papers, Lena," Cole said. His voice was low, steady, too calm for the madness burning in his eyes. "You'll give me the house, the accounts, everything. Then this can be over." Over? How do you end a life that isn't even yours anymore? I clutched my son closer. "I can't," I whispered. "Please, Cole, don't do this. I'm pregnant. Think about the baby." He snapped. Not loudly. Not like the yelling I had learned to fear. This was worse. Controlled. Calculated. A dark smile spread on his face. "You should have thought about that before you pushed me," he said, though I had never touched him. Lies came to him smoother than breath. "Ava," he added, tilting his chin toward me. "Show her she doesn't get to disrespect me." Ava froze. For a second, I saw her eyelids tremble, a flicker of doubt, maybe even fear. She looked at my belly round, vulnerable, carrying a life not even ready to face the world. I tried to reach her with my eyes. I tried to beg without speaking, but her face hardened. "Cole, are you sure?" she whispered. He stepped closer, placing a hand on her back. "You want a future with me, right? Then you'll listen." The room fell silent, except for my son's soft whimpers. I curled around him instinctively, but my body was too slow, too heavy. Ava lifted her foot. My heart pounded so violently I could barely hear my own sobbing. Time twisted, stretched, tore apart. Her shoe pressed into my stomach. A scream ripped out of me, raw, broken, animal. Pain exploded through my body, white and blinding. My son cried louder, terrified. I didn't know where to turn, what to shield, what to protect first. My hands shook violently as I tried to get up, but Cole pushed me back down with his boot against my shoulder. "See?" he said softly. "Now you understand." Blood warmed the inside of my legs. My vision blurred. Somewhere behind the velvet curtain near the window, a faint click echoed so small I almost missed it. A phone camera, a breath held, a presence I didn't know was there. But Cole didn't hear it. Ava didn't hear it. Only I felt it, like a shadow shifting in the dark. Someone was watching. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Someone who might change everything. And what that person did next would turn this nightmare into a war Cole never saw coming. I didn't know his name yet, not that night. Not while my blood spread across the white rug like a blooming, horrible flower. But behind that velvet curtain, hidden in the dim glow of the city lights, a man stood completely still, watching everything unfold with a silent intensity that made the air feel heavier than the storm outside. Later, I would learn that his breathing slowed the way trained soldiers do when danger rises. But in that moment, he was only a shadow, a shape, a stranger holding his phone just steady enough to capture the truth that could save my life. General Marcus Aldridge hadn't meant to be in the townhouse at all. Hours earlier, he had stopped by the cafe where I used to work night shifts. Someone mentioned they hadn't seen me in weeks, that I looked pale the last time I came in, that my husband always hovered too close. Something in those words bothered him, not curiosity, but instinct. The kind carved into a man who spent 40 years reading danger before it struck. He drove his black sedan to our address, planning only to knock, maybe offer help, maybe convince himself he was overthinking everything. But when he reached the front door, voices exploded from inside Cole's sharp authority, my cries, the baby's desperate screams. He didn't call out, didn't knock, didn't hesitate. He moved around the side entrance, the same way soldiers avoid a front line when the threat inside is unknown. And he slipped quietly through the unlocked back door, finding the curtain just in time to watch my world shatter. He wasn't alone. His guilt wasn't alone either. Because General Aldridge knew Cole, not personally. But years ago, Cole had worked under a private contractor connected to one of Aldridge's post-retirement investigations. Files had gone missing, witnesses intimidated, a case abruptly shut. Aldridge had always suspected someone inside that contractor group had crossed a line, but he never found proof. When he heard Cole's voice that night, shouting demands, twisting reality, the memory slammed into him like a punch. Standing behind the curtain, Aldridge lifted his phone. The first click of the camera sounded too loud in his ears. But no one noticed. Not Cole. Not Ava. Not even me. He recorded everything. My pleading, Ava's hesitation, Cole's threats, the moment the shoe pressed into my belly, the moment I screamed, the moment my son cried as though the world were tearing open. A seasoned soldier had seen war, but even he felt his stomach turn. His fingers tightened around the phone. A part of him wanted to charge forward and tear Cole away from me. But another part, older, wiser, strategic, knew that if he acted too soon, Cole would twist the story skillfully. Men like him always did. Evidence would vanish, witnesses would crumble, and I might still end up alone, blamed, powerless. Aldridge forced himself to stay hidden, to gather proof, to wait. But everything changed the second he saw me collapse. The second my head hit the floor. The second the pool of red spread too fast. He dialed 911 with the calm of a man who'd ordered medevacs under gunfire. He gave the address, reported a pregnant woman in critical condition, stated there was ongoing domestic violence, and ended the call before anyone could ask for his name. Then he stepped out of the curtain's shadow just far enough to see Cole freeze when the sirens began echoing through the street. And that was the moment Cole realized something was wrong. Not with me. Not with the baby. But with the house. Someone else was inside. And that someone wasn't afraid of him. Before my world shrank into a pool of blood on the living room floor, there was a time when I believed in the promises, Cole whispered. Looking back now, it feels like remembering a dream someone else lived, not me. But that dream is important, because it shows how someone like him becomes the center of your world before he crushes it beneath his heel. 3 years ago, I was working 2 jobs, morning shifts, cleaning a yoga studio, and evening shifts at Harbor Street Cafe. I was tired, broke, but hopeful, in a quiet way. I carried a small notebook in my apron where I wrote goals like pay rent on time and maybe finish community college. I didn't need much. Stability would have been enough. That's when Cole walked in for the first time. He wore a charcoal jacket, messy hair that looked intentionally styled, and a smile that made people look twice. He ordered black coffee, no sugar, no cream, like someone who wanted the world simple and bitter. He asked my name, then asked why someone with eyes like that worked nights. I laughed nervously, thinking it was just harmless flirting. Men like him always sounded harmless at first. The second time he came in, he left a $100 tip. I tried to give it back, but he insisted. I like helping people who work hard, he said. You remind me of someone I used to know. Back then, I had no idea how easily admiration can turn into chains. Cole started showing up more often. He'd ask about my life, my dreams, my rent situation. It felt good to be seen, really seen by someone who seemed powerful and put together. When he offered to help me buy a new phone, because a woman alone at night should always be reachable, I felt grateful, not controlled. That's how it starts. Not with fists. With favors. When we began dating, he was gentle, attentive. He'd bring dinner to the cafe just before my shift ended. He'd text good night and good morning. He'd drive across town just to walk me home. People at work said I was lucky. I thought so too. But small signs crept in. He didn't like when male customers were too friendly. He didn't like when I worked late. He didn't like when I didn't answer fast enough. I mistook obsession for devotion. 6 months later, he proposed at the Brooklyn Bridge Park. I said yes because no one had ever chosen me so loudly. After we got married, he moved us into the townhouse owned by his mother. Temporary, he said, until we build something bigger. I didn't know the house wasn't mine in any way, not legally, not emotionally, not safely. Pregnancy made everything worse. When I was carrying our first child, Cole's protectiveness sharpened. He didn't want me working. He didn't want me seeing friends. He said stress wasn't good for the baby. I thought he cared. I didn't know he was isolating me. His mother, Victoria, adored him too much to ever question him. When he snapped at me, she said, "He's just tired." When he grabbed my wrist too hard, she said, "Men get frustrated." When I cried, she said, "Children need a stable home, Lena." I tried to be that stability. I quit my job. I learned to make the meals he liked. I learned the exact tone of voice that wouldn't set him off. I learned to shrink myself, because small things survive storms better. But shrinking comes with a price. I stopped recognizing myself. I stopped dreaming. And when I found out I was pregnant again just 5 months after giving birth, I saw fear in his eyes, not joy. That night he punched a hole in the wall and told me I was ruining everything. I should have left then. But I stayed. And staying led to the night where everything broke. And the truth about Cole's past finally surfaced, in a way I never saw coming. Before Cole's violence became something undeniable, before the bruises shaped themselves into patterns even I couldn't pretend were accidents, there was his mother, Victoria Hartman. People said she was elegant, refined, the kind of woman who arranged her pearls each morning with practiced grace. But living under the same roof with her was like living inside a beautifully decorated prison cell. Pretty, polished, suffocating. Victoria loved her son with a loyalty that remained blind even when the truth sat bruised at her dinner table. She excused everything. Every slammed door, every insult, every moment his voice cut me in half. "He works hard," she'd say calmly while slicing vegetables with perfect precision. Men with pressure sometimes misplace their temper. Misplace, as if it were a wallet he accidentally dropped instead of a weapon he aimed. When I first moved into the townhouse, I tried so hard to be what she wanted, a respectful young wife who didn't complain, didn't challenge, didn't speak too loudly. Victoria grew up believing men were the pillars of a household, unbreakable, righteous, unquestionable. Wives were the ones who bent so the pillars didn't crumble. I bent so much I nearly snapped. After my first pregnancy, she took over the house like a general commanding her troops. She adjusted the nursery, selected the crib, picked the curtains, even threw away a baby blanket I had knitted because it looked homemade. I watched her lift it with 2 fingers, as though touching it might smear her polished world. I wanted to cry, but instead I said thank you. That was the beginning of my silence. Sometimes I caught her watching me while I held my son, her eyes trailing over my tired face, my messy hair, my shaky hands. But instead of asking if I needed help, she'd sigh softly and say, "Children require order. Chaos affects their development." In her mind, I was the chaos. But what I didn't know then was this. Victoria had secrets too. On a quiet afternoon shortly after I became pregnant again, she slipped and said something strange. Cole was yelling upstairs over a missing document, God knows what, and she touched her earring nervously, whispering, "He's just like his father." The way she said it didn't sound like fondness or nostalgia. It sounded like fear. Real fear. Cold and old. When I asked what she meant, she stiffened. "Never mind, you'll only make it worse." Then she hurried away, shutting her bedroom door as though hiding from ghosts. That was the first time I wondered if she had survived a life I was now repeating. But fear does not automatically equal courage. Even if she once lived through storms, she had now become part of mine. Every time Cole shouted, she stepped aside. Every time he grabbed my arm, she looked down. Each moment of silence from her confirmed something heartbreaking. She wasn't going to save me. The day Cole brought Ava into the house for the first time, claiming she was a fitness coach, helping him stay in shape, Victoria served her tea with trembling hands. I saw it then, a flicker in her eyes. Recognition. Not of Ava, but of something darker. A pattern she thought she had buried decades ago. When Ava laughed too loudly, when Cole touched her lower back in a way no married man should, Victoria's knuckles whitened around the teacup, but she said nothing. She put loyalty above truth, the way she always did. And when the night of the attack finally came, when she saw her son order another woman to hurt his pregnant wife, she didn't scream. She didn't intervene. She froze like a statue carved from guilt and denial. But silence doesn't erase responsibility. And soon, the weight of that silence would tear her open. Because the truth she buried about Cole's past was coming back. And this time, it wouldn't stay hidden. Ava Monroe wasn't simply a mistress. She was a spark tossed into a house already soaked in gasoline. Before she entered our lives, Cole was controlling, unpredictable, and often cruel. But after she appeared, his cruelty sharpened into something deliberate, something theatrical, something he wanted witnessed. The first time I saw her, she was standing in our kitchen wearing a cropped athletic top, a water bottle tucked under her arm as if she owned the place. Cole introduced her with a grin that made my stomach twist. "This is Ava," he said casually. "My trainer. She'll be helping me get back in shape." The smile he gave her wasn't the smile of a married man. It was the smile of someone showing off a new toy. And Ava knew it. She shook my hand with the confidence of a woman who had never been told no. Her nails were perfectly manicured, pale pink, and her skin smelled like coconut lotion. She was beautiful in the effortless way that women who have never struggled tend to be. I remember feeling small next to her, exhausted, wearing a milk-stained t-shirt and holding a baby who still woke me up 3 times a night. Cole noticed the contrast. It pleased him. At first, Ava acted polite, even warm. She complimented my son. She asked about my pregnancy. But her eyes scanned the house as if placing herself in it, imagining where her things could go. I didn't realize then that she wasn't just visiting. She was auditioning. Over the next weeks, Cole began mentioning her constantly. "Ava says I should eat cleaner. Ava thinks I should try a new routine. Ava says I'm holding too much stress." Soon, my name wasn't in his sentences at all. He stopped asking about my day, but he could quote every detail of hers. The day he brought home a set of overpriced supplements Ava recommended, I finally asked, "Are you spending this much on everyone's advice or just hers?" He didn't answer with words. He answered by sweeping the jar off the counter, letting it shatter across the floor. "Don't question what you don't understand," he growled. Ava's presence grew bolder after that. She would send him photos, workout shots, mirror selfies, little winks he didn't bother to hide. One night, I found a message on his phone. "When will she be gone so we can really talk?" I felt my throat close, but when I confronted him, he spun it so effortlessly I wondered if I imagined everything. "You're hormonal," he said. "Your mind is playing tricks. Don't embarrass yourself." Then he kissed my forehead like he was comforting a child. Not lying to a wife. But Ava made one mistake. She underestimated the power dynamics in the house. She thought she had Cole wrapped around her finger. She didn't realize Cole chose people for their usefulness, not their worth. And Ava, with her vanity and hunger for attention, was easy to mold. Cole showered her with promises, apartment keys, vacations, a future more glamorous than any fitness influencer could dream of. She believed every word. And as her confidence grew, so did her cruelty. She stopped hiding her smirks. She started making comments about my appearance, my slow energy, my weak posture. Once, while I was washing bottles, she leaned against the doorway and said, "You know, some women just aren't meant to keep a man challenged." It wasn't jealousy in her tone. It was pity. Pity is the kindest weapon of the cruel. But the thing neither she nor Cole knew was this. Ava wasn't just stepping into a romance. She was stepping into a storm she couldn't control. And soon, the truth about Cole's other life would drag her down with him in a way she never expected. People think abuse begins with a slap, a shout, a bruise you can photograph. They don't understand the slow, invisible kind, the kind that starts with a tone, then a threat, then a rule that sounds reasonable until you realize it's a cage. By the time the bruises appeared on my body, I had already been living under Cole's control for so long that I barely remembered what freedom felt like. It began right after my first pregnancy. I was exhausted, waking every 2 hours to feed the baby, my body still aching from childbirth. All I wanted was rest, a shower, maybe a warm meal. Instead, Cole chose that moment to reinvent himself as the man of the house, as if fatherhood demanded dominance, not tenderness. He made new rules. No visitors unless he approved, no phone calls longer than 10 minutes, no going outside after sunset. "I'm protecting you," he said, brushing my cheek with a hand that later would become a fist. Then he took my debit card. "You're on maternity leave. I'll handle the finances." At first, I thought it was temporary. But when I asked for money to buy baby formula, he lectured me about responsibility. That night, I cried in the bathroom with the shower running so no one would hear. The first bruise came a week later. He had misplaced a document for his contracting job, a job that always felt vague, secretive, tinged with danger, and he accused me of moving it. When I said I hadn't touched anything, he squeezed my wrist so tightly I felt a pop. Purple marks bloomed the next morning, but Victoria said, "Men don't know their strength. Don't provoke him when he's stressed." The second bruise came when I asked if he'd eaten dinner yet. The third, when I suggested we could attend counseling. But the worst injuries weren't physical. They were the ones that made me doubt my own sanity. Cole perfected the art of gaslighting. If I cried, he said I was emotionally unstable. If I flinched, he claimed I was overreacting. When he screamed at me, he later insisted he hadn't. He twisted reality until I couldn't trust my own memories. He'd say things like, "You're lucky I stay with you," or "Most men would leave a mess like you," and I absorbed every word like it was gospel. But the hardest part, the part that still burns, was how easily he turned my love for our child into a weapon. When the baby cried, Cole blamed me. When I asked for help, he said I was unfit. Once when I hadn't slept for 30 hours, he whispered in my ear, "If you don't get yourself together, I'll take him away." And I believed him. Men like Cole always know exactly where to stab. As my second pregnancy progressed, he became more erratic. Money vanished. Phone calls from unknown numbers increased. He changed the locks without telling me. Some nights he didn't come home at all, returning with the smell of perfume that wasn't mine. When I confronted him, he pinned me against the wall, not hard enough to leave visible marks, but just enough to prove he could. "I own this house," he said coldly, "and everything in it, everything." Meaning me. One night, after he stormed out, I sat on the edge of the bed, holding my belly, rocking gently as if soothing the baby inside. In the dark, I whispered, "I don't know how much longer we can survive him." But I didn't know help was already watching from the edges of my life. And I didn't know that Cole's violence was about to escalate into something so monstrous. It would force the truth of his secret world into the light, dragging all of us into a danger far beyond the walls of our home. The night I finally reached out for help wasn't dramatic. There were no screaming matches, no broken dishes, no marks on my skin, just a quiet, crushing moment when I realized I couldn't breathe inside my own life anymore. Cole had stormed out after accusing me of sabotaging his work by moving a folder I didn't even know existed. The baby was crying, my stomach was tight with stress, and for the first time, I felt something dangerous: resignation. I sat on the edge of the couch, holding my son against my shoulder, while the storm outside tapped the windows with cold fingers. My phone, an older model Cole hadn't bothered to monitor closely, rested on the armrest. Something inside me whispered, "If you don't reach out now, there won't be a later." I didn't know who to contact. My family and I hadn't spoken in years. Friends drifted away once Cole began controlling who I saw. Then, I remembered the old man from the cafe, Marcus Aldridge. He had always tipped generously, asked how I was doing, treated me like a person instead of background noise. One night, he left his business card with a quiet smile and said, "If you ever need anything, Miss Hartman, don't hesitate." I had laughed then, thinking he was just being kind. I had no clue he was a retired general who had seen more darkness than most people could imagine. My hands trembled as I typed the message. "Hi, this is Lena from the cafe. I'm sorry to bother you, but I don't feel safe. I think something bad is going to happen. I don't know what to do." I hovered over the send button for a long moment. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my teeth. Finally, I hit send. Seconds later, the 3 dots appeared. He replied almost immediately. "Where are you? Are you alone? Is the baby okay?" I didn't know how to answer. Everything felt fragile. Every word felt risky. I typed back, "At home. He's gone for now. But it's getting worse. I'm pregnant again. I'm scared." There was a long pause. Long enough for me to imagine he regretted responding, that he'd decide I was overreacting or dramatic. But then, "I'm coming by tomorrow afternoon. You don't need to say anything you're not ready to. I just want to make sure you and the baby are safe." His calmness didn't feel intrusive. It felt like a life raft. I didn't know that General Aldridge had already crossed paths with men like Cole. That he recognized certain phrases, certain patterns, certain cries for help hidden between lines. He didn't see my message as an inconvenience. He saw it as a warning flare. The next day, I tried to pretend everything was normal. I cleaned the house. I folded baby clothes. I ignored the ache in my ribs and the dread in my chest. Cole left early for what he called contracting business, wearing the same wary expression he had whenever he dealt with that shadowy network of people who seemed to own pieces of him. When Aldridge arrived, he didn't knock loudly. He stood at the doorway with a gentle posture, as if afraid sudden movements might shatter me. He didn't ask intrusive questions. He didn't pry. He simply said, "You look tired," with a softness that made my throat tighten. But before I could speak, Cole's car pulled into the driveway. Earlier than expected, Aldridge's eyes sharpened with the precision of a man who had spent decades reading danger before it landed. He stepped back into the shadows of the hallway. "Don't say I was here," he whispered. "Not yet." My stomach dropped. My pulse hammered. Cole slammed the front door open, footsteps heavy, mood unpredictable. He glanced at me, suspicious, scanning the room. "Who were you talking to?" he demanded. My voice wavered, but I managed. "No one." But Cole wasn't convinced. And I didn't know it then, but his paranoia spilled into something far bigger. Because Aldridge had seen his face and recognized him from a classified investigation no one had ever closed. Cole's paranoia didn't fade after that afternoon, it grew teeth. He paced the townhouse like he was guarding state secrets instead of a life he was slowly destroying. The next morning, he woke me before sunrise, ripping the blanket off my legs. "Get up," he snapped. "We're going to fix things today." Fix things. In Cole's language, that meant he was about to make everything worse. He dragged a stack of folders from his office, slamming them onto the dining table. Contracts, bank statements, and documents covered in redacted lines spilled out like a confession no one asked for. He pointed to a page with my name typed neatly at the bottom. "You're signing these," he said. "All of them." The words he chose next made my stomach drop. "It's for your protection." I had heard that phrase before. Every time he tightened the leash, he used those exact words. I picked up one of the pages, and a chill crawled up my spine. It wasn't a simple transfer of property, this was a guardianship document, the kind that claimed the signee was mentally unfit. If I signed this, I would lose everything: my child, my autonomy, my credibility. It was the ultimate trap. And he was setting it in broad daylight. "I won't sign this," I whispered. Cole's jaw tightened. "You will, or you'll prove exactly why you need someone to take care of you." I felt my baby shift inside me, as if sensing the danger in the room. While he ranted, pacing, muttering about people watching him and everyone wanting to take what's his, I realized something terrifying. Cole wasn't just abusive, he was unraveling. Whatever he was involved in had started to crack open, and he was dragging me with him. Then the doorbell rang. Cole stiffened. I froze. He wasn't expecting anyone. He motioned for me to stay quiet like I had a choice, and approached the door with the tension of someone preparing for ambush. When he opened it, sunlight spilled across the floor, and a familiar silhouette appeared. General Marcus Aldridge. Calm, collected, empty-handed. But his eyes flicked instantly to me, then to the documents scattered across the table. Cole forced a smile. "Can I help you?" Aldridge returned the smile, though his didn't reach his eyes. "I believe you can." Then he stepped inside without waiting for permission. He carried himself like a man who had every right to be there, a man who'd seen Cole's type before and ended them. Cole's face twitched in irritation. "I didn't invite you." "And yet," Aldridge replied, "here I am." Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, a threat, a history Cole didn't want revisited. I clutched my belly, trying to make sense of it. They knew each other, no. Aldridge knew of him, the way someone recognizes a dangerous animal from a file photo, and Cole knew it too. "What do you want?" Cole asked sharply. Aldridge didn't answer him. He turned to me. "Lena, are you all right?" Cole stepped between us. "She's fine." Aldridge didn't blink. "She can answer for herself." Something inside me cracked, then the part that had accepted silence as survival. I lifted my chin. "No," I said softly. "I'm not fine." Cole's eyes darkened with a promise of punishment. Aldridge noticed. He scanned the table, picking up the guardianship form. "Interesting document," he murmured. "You planning something? Long-term, Cole?" Cole snatched it back. "Mind your business." "Oh," Aldridge said, voice turning cold. "I'm afraid this is my business." He leaned in just slightly. "You should have stayed off the radar." The color drained from Cole's face. I didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. But I knew one thing. Aldridge hadn't come to make conversation. He had come because he suspected the storm was about to break open. And he was right. Because the danger circling our home wasn't just abuse. It was the shadow of Cole's criminal world closing in. And soon, there would be no turning back. The day everything snapped open didn't begin with shouting. It began with preparation, Cole's favorite sport. He'd been pacing the townhouse since sunrise, straightening his collar, checking his reflection in every surface that held a shine. He was buzzing with the kind of restless energy men get when they're about to flaunt their power. "We're going to the contracting office today," he announced, tightening his tie in the mirror. "I need Ava there. You'll come too." I froze. "Why me?" He smirked. "Optics." Optics. The same word he used when forcing me to smile at family dinners, to hide bruises under sweaters, to pretend we were normal. What I didn't realize yet was that this outing wasn't about business. It was a staged performance. And I was the prop. He made me dress in something presentable. I wore a long, loose dress to hide my pregnancy and the fading yellow marks on my arms. Ava arrived minutes later, wearing heels too high for the occasion and a smug grin too sharp for daylight. She slid herself into Cole's passenger seat with a familiarity that made my stomach churn. I sat in the back, pressed against the door, holding my belly gently as the car rolled through Brooklyn and into Manhattan. The building we arrived at wasn't an office, it was a fortress of glass and steel, humming with tension. Men in dark suits moved with purpose. They glanced at Cole, then at me, then at Ava. Every look held judgment, confusion, suspicion. Something was off before we even stepped inside. Cole straightened, adjusting his jacket as if stepping into a spotlight. "Stay quiet unless spoken to," he hissed at me, "and don't embarrass me." Inside, the receptionist directed us to a conference room. The moment the door opened, I saw him. General Marcus Aldridge. Already seated, already waiting. Cole stopped dead, his bravado cracked like thin ice. "What is he doing here?" Aldridge didn't smile. "Funny, I could ask you the same." His voice carried authority that silenced the room instantly. But it wasn't just the tone, it was the presence, the kind you can't fake. Ava blinked, confused. "Cole, who is he?" Aldridge ignored her. His eyes were fixed solely on Cole, studying him as if examining a threat. "Let's not waste time. Sit." Cole hesitated, but command was something his ego couldn't resist. He sat. Ava perched beside him. I stayed near the wall, unsure if I was allowed space at the table. Aldridge gestured toward me. "Lena, take a seat." Cole slammed his hand on the table. "She's not part of this." Aldridge's stare hardened. "She's the only part that matters." The room went still. Then Aldridge placed a USB drive on the table. It tapped once against the polished wood, a sound so soft yet so powerful it made my pulse quicken. "This," he said, "contains footage from your home." Cole's face drained of color. Ava leaned forward, confused. Aldridge continued, "The assault, the coercion, the documents you tried forcing her to sign, everything." Ava's lips parted in horror. "Cole, what is he talking about?" Cole tried to stand, but two suited men appeared suddenly at his sides. Not guards, not employees, federal agents. Aldridge leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "Cole Hartman, you are under active investigation for involvement with an illicit contractor network, financial misconduct, and domestic violence." Ava gasped. "You said you stopped working with them." Cole snarled at her. "Shut up." But this time, she didn't. She backed away from him as if seeing a monster for the first time. I watched, breath shaking, as the man who controlled every corner of my life realized he no longer controlled the room. Then Aldridge looked at me, really looked at me. "This is only the beginning," he said softly. "But today, Lena, today he answers to someone stronger than him." Cole lunged, eyes blazing, but the agents pinned him instantly. And as they forced him into handcuffs, he spat the last words he'd ever say to me as a free man. "This isn't over." But he was wrong. Something new had just begun. The moment the federal agents dragged Cole out of the building, something inside me cracked, not with relief, but with the weight of everything I had held together for too long. My knees buckled, my breath shortened. A sharp pain tore through my abdomen, low and deep, as if my body had been waiting for the tiniest permission to collapse. Ava screamed as I slumped against the wall, her voice high and useless. But the only person who moved with purpose was General Marcus Aldridge. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands firm yet gentle as he steadied me. "Lena," he said, voice controlled but urgent. "Look at me. How long have you been hurting?" "A few minutes," I whispered, clutching my belly. "Something's wrong. Something's really wrong." Aldridge looked at the floor. A thin trail of blood ran down my legs and pooled onto the clean tile. His jaw clenched. "We need medical evacuation now," he barked to the agents. Ava backed away, trembling. I didn't mean for any of this." But Aldridge cut her off without raising his voice. "Save it. Your choices helped bring her here." His words weren't cruel. They were facts, not softened for comfort. Ava covered her mouth and sobbed as 2 agents ushered her aside. Another contraction hit me, violent, burning, my vision blurred. "Please don't let me lose this baby," I cried. My son inside me rolled desperately, reacting to the chaos. Aldridge gripped my shoulders and leaned close. "Listen to me. You are not losing anything today. Do you understand? You hold on. I've seen women stronger than soldiers survive worse than this. You fight, Lena." The elevator ride felt endless. My blood dripped onto Aldridge's sleeve, blooming into a dark stain. When the doors opened, paramedics rushed toward us, lifting me onto a stretcher. The bright hallway lights stabbed my eyes. Somewhere behind me, Ava whispered, "I'm sorry," but the apology dissolved into the buzz of radios and hurried footsteps. As they wheeled me outside, the cold Manhattan air slapped my skin awake. I stared at the sky, pale and merciless above the towering buildings. Aldridge walked beside the stretcher, refusing to fall behind. "You're safe now," he kept saying. "It's over." But it wasn't. Not yet. Inside the ambulance, a medic checked my vitals. "Severe bleeding," he murmured. "Blood pressure dropping. We need to move." My heart hammered wildly. "Where's my baby?" "Is he?" "We'll do everything we can," the medic assured, though his eyes betrayed worry. Aldridge climbed into the front passenger seat and spoke to the driver. "NYU Langone. Trauma priority." His voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded medevacs across war zones. As the siren wailed and the city blurred by, memories flashed: Cole's fist slamming the wall, Ava's cruel smirk, Victoria's silence, all the moments I had swallowed for the sake of survival. They pressed down on my chest until I could barely inhale. The medic placed an oxygen mask over my face. "Stay with me, Lena." I tried. I really did. But the pain fractured everything. Tears streamed down my temples, soaking into the stretcher cushion. "If something happens, please protect my baby," I whispered. The medic nodded, though his expression stiffened. Through the haze, I heard Aldridge's voice crack for the first time. "Nothing will happen to you. Do you hear me? Not on my watch." But my vision kept dimming. My fingers felt distant. My heartbeat sounded underwater. And just before my consciousness slipped away completely, I heard the medic shout, "We're losing her." I woke to darkness, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, suffocating darkness that presses against your ribs and whispers that you may never open your eyes again. Voices drifted in and out like waves against a distant shore. My body felt cold, weightless, as though I had been peeled away from myself. Then a piercing beep sliced through the fog. Another. Machines, hospital machines. I wasn't dead. Not yet. When my eyes finally forced themselves open, the world came in pieces. Fluorescent lights, ceiling tiles, the metallic taste of oxygen tubing. Then a blurry silhouette standing at the foot of my bed, broad shoulders, white hair, a stiff posture, softened only by the worry etched into his face. General Marcus Aldridge. "You're awake," he breathed, exhaling a tension he'd clearly been holding for hours. "Thank God." I tried to speak, but only a cracked whisper came out. "My baby?" A nurse stepped closer, adjusting my IV. "Your baby is still with us," she said gently. "We were able to stop the bleeding, but you need to rest. You've been through major trauma." Tears slipped down my cheeks without permission. Relief and terror mixed inside me like oil and water. "Is he okay?" "Is he?" "We're monitoring him closely," the nurse said, "but he's strong, and you fought hard." Aldridge moved to my side, pulling a chair close. "You scared the hell out of all of us." His voice cracked just slightly enough for me to hear the humanity behind the military steel. "Cole?" I whispered. A storm passed through his expression. "In custody. For now." But his associates, he was into things deeper than you knew. When he realized the investigation was closing in, he panicked. Those documents he tried to make you sign, they weren't just about control. He was preparing to disappear and leave you behind, powerless. A cold shiver crept up my spine. Disappear? Aldridge nodded. Men in that contractor network don't retire. They run, or they get erased. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Cole thought eliminating your credibility would sever the one vulnerability investigators could use against him. You. My stomach twisted painfully. Even in handcuffs, Cole still seemed capable of destroying my life. The nurse checked my vitals again, then left the room. The moment she disappeared, Aldridge leaned forward. There's something you need to know. Something I didn't tell you before. My breath hitched. What? He folded his hands, eyes lowering for the first time since I'd known him. Cole wasn't just a name in my files. Years ago, his father was part of a covert operation I oversaw. A mission that went wrong. Very wrong. His voice deepened. There were accusations of abuse, violence, threats against his own family. The apple didn't fall far, Lena. I felt nausea rise in my throat. Victoria, she knew. She suspected, Aldridge corrected softly. But people cling to denial when truth is unbearable. A wave of exhaustion washed over me. I pressed a hand to my belly, whispering to the child growing inside me. I have to get my son away from all of this. Away from him. Aldridge's jaw tightened. You will, I promise you. A promise from a general wasn't just words, it was a strategy already forming behind his eyes. Just then, a doctor entered, clipboard in hand. He greeted us quietly before delivering news that made my heart lurch. We need to keep you under observation for several days. There is still a risk of complications. And we need to discuss the possibility that another incident like this could put both you and the baby at extreme risk. The room seemed to tilt. Another incident, another attack, another chance for Cole to finish what he started. Aldridge stood, placing a steadying hand on my shoulder. She won't be anywhere near him again. The doctor nodded politely, unaware of how literal that promise was about to become. And as fear pulsed through me, one truth rose above the rest. The fight for my life wasn't over. It had only just begun. I didn't expect to see Victoria Hartman again, not after the way she froze the night her son ordered another woman to crush my belly. But on the second morning in the hospital, just after dawn painted pale gold across the windows, she appeared at my doorway, clutching a handbag too tightly, like she was afraid it might run away. Her hair was neat, her pearls perfectly aligned, but something in her face had cracked. She looked older, smaller, a woman whose world had shifted in ways she could no longer control. Lena? Her voice trembled. May I come in? Every instinct told me to turn away. But I nodded, not out of kindness, out of exhaustion. I had no energy to fight her shadows. She closed the door gently, as if noise might shatter me further. When she saw the IV lines, the bruises on my arms, the machines blinking above my head, she pressed a hand to her mouth. Tears welled instantly. I didn't know. The words fell apart on her tongue. I stared at her. You did know. You just didn't want to believe. Her shoulders slumped, as though someone had cut the strings holding her upright. She approached the bed, hesitating at every step. I thought, if I looked away, it wouldn't be real. And if it wasn't real, then Cole wasn't. Her voice broke. Wasn't like his father. The name hit me like cold air. His father? She sank into the chair beside me, clutching the armrests. Cole's father had two faces. One for the world, and one for us at home. He controlled everything, my money, my movements, my voice. And when Cole was 8, he hurt him. Badly. Her eyes glistened. Marcus Aldridge was the officer who helped us hide. He made sure my husband never found us again. The room tilted. Aldridge wasn't just a witness in my story, he'd been part of theirs, long before mine began. I thought if I raised Cole right, she whispered, he would never become that man. But the darkness, it came anyway, slowly, quietly, and I kept telling myself I could manage it, that I could guide him. But I failed. I failed you. I failed my grandchild. Her sob burst out then, raw and unsteady. It startled me. I had never seen Victoria break her composure. She wasn't a woman who cried, she was a woman who straightened her posture and swallowed truth whole. But here she was, undone. I should have protected you, she choked. I should have intervened. When he yelled, when he bruised you, when he brought that girl into the house, when he hurt you that night. Her voice collapsed. I froze because I saw my past replaying, and I hated myself for it. I felt something shift inside me, not forgiveness, but clarity. Victoria wasn't innocent. But she wasn't evil either. She was a survivor still trapped in her own prison. She reached into her handbag with shaking hands and pulled out a small folder. These are financial records, Cole's accounts, transfers he hid, names he worked with. I didn't understand all of it, but Marcus will. It could help protect you and put him away longer. I stared at the folder. A lifeline disguised as paperwork. Why are you giving this to me? I asked softly. Her answer was immediate. Because you're the only one who ever tried to love him without fear, and because you're carrying the only innocent piece of him left. She touched my belly gently. This child deserves safety. You deserve safety. Tears filled my eyes, not for her, not for Cole, but for the future I desperately wanted to believe in. Victoria squeezed my hand, fragile but sincere. I can't undo what I allowed, but I can help now, if you'll let me. For the first time, she looked at me not as a daughter-in-law, but as someone she hoped to save. And I didn't yet know it, but this folder, this fragile act of courage, would ignite a chain of events that exposed everything Cole kept buried and bring his world crashing down. General Marcus Aldridge didn't knock when he entered my hospital room that afternoon. He moved with steady purpose, the same disciplined stride I'd seen when he confronted Cole weeks earlier. But this time, his face carried something heavier, resolve sharpened by anger. Not loud anger, but the kind that burns cold and precise, the kind that topples empires. Victoria, still seated beside my bed, straightened immediately. For a moment, the three of us hung in uneasy silence. Then Aldridge closed the door behind him and said, "It's time you knew everything, Lena." My pulse quickened. Everything. About what? He pulled a chair to the foot of my bed, placed a thick envelope on his lap, and rested his hands over it. About Cole. His father, the network he was involved with, and why he became the man who nearly killed you. Victoria looked away, her eyes brimming. This wasn't new for her. She'd carried these truths for years. Aldridge began, his voice level but cold. 15 years ago, I was overseeing a classified investigation into a contractor group called Red Meridian. They claimed to provide private security, but really, they were trafficking weapons to unstable regions. And they operated outside every law imaginable. I swallowed hard. And Cole worked for them? He did more than that, Aldridge said. He learned from men who believed dominance was strength and cruelty was discipline, men like his father. Victoria let out a soft sob. Aldridge paused, giving her space, but continued. Cole's father, Daniel Hartman, was part of Red Meridian. He was violent, unpredictable, and lethal when crossed. But he knew how to hide it behind charm when needed. The same charm Cole used on you. My stomach tightened. It wasn't shocking, it was confirming. During one operation, Aldridge continued, Daniel turned on his own team. People died. And when we went to question him, we discovered something disturbing. He locked eyes with me. He was abusing his wife and child so severely that neighbors filed repeated reports. Every time, he covered his tracks. Threats, bribes, lies. Eventually, both Victoria and Cole disappeared. We assumed they entered a protection program, but no official request was filed. They simply vanished. Victoria wiped her eyes shakily. I ran, Lena. I ran with a child who was already broken in ways I couldn't fix. Aldridge nodded softly. I found them years later. Victoria begged me not to reopen the case. She said her son just needed a fresh start. I honored that request. My breath caught. And now? Aldridge's expression hardened. Now I know I made a mistake. Silence wrapped around us like a heavy blanket. He set the envelope on the bed and slid it toward me. These are transcripts, photos, financial trails. Evidence tying Cole not only to Red Meridian, but to recent activity they've been trying to bury. He wasn't just an employee, he was becoming a liability to them, a loose end. So, they were after him? I whispered. Eventually, Aldridge said, but he panicked early, he tried to disappear, and he needed you powerless so you wouldn't jeopardize his story. It was all clicking. The documents he forced on me, the sudden demands, the fear in his voice when the doorbell rang unexpectedly. He didn't hurt you because he hated you, Aldridge said. He hurt you because he was scared, and scared men are the most dangerous kind. Victoria covered her mouth, shaking. I didn't want this life for him. I didn't want this for you. I was trembling too, but with something new, rage simmering beneath exhaustion. Aldridge leaned forward, voice low and steady. Lena, we're going to bring him down properly, not just for what he did to you, but for every life he's damaged. But I need your permission to use the evidence you now have. I looked at the envelope, my future, my child's future, proof of everything I survived. Then I met Aldridge's eyes. You have my permission. His shoulders eased not with triumph, but with solemn respect. And as he stood, preparing for the war ahead, I realized the truth wasn't a burden anymore, it was a weapon. And it was finally in my hands. The day after Aldridge revealed everything, the hospital room transformed from a place of recovery into a quiet war room. Not loud, not chaotic, strategic, calculated, the kind of planning you feel in your bones before you understand it with your mind. I sat propped against pillows, one hand resting over my belly, while Aldridge and the woman he introduced as Danielle Brooks, an attorney with a reputation sharp enough to slice steel, stood at the foot of my bed reviewing documents. Danielle was nothing like I expected. No flashy suit, no cold courtroom expression. She wore dark jeans, a navy sweater, and glasses she kept pushing up her nose. But when she spoke, every word was deliberate, anchored, powerful. We can dismantle him from 3 angles, she said calmly. Criminal, financial, domestic. She spread the papers across the tray table. But the goal isn't just to punish him, it's to make sure he never gets within a mile of you or your children again. Children, plural. The word made my chest tighten. Aldridge nodded. Cole's group will turn on him if we move the right way. We just have to give them a reason to let him fall. But there was something unspoken beneath his tone, something about the danger of challenging a contractor network that didn't mind burying their mistakes. Danielle looked at me, her eyes softer than her voice. I know this is overwhelming, Lena, but you're not alone. The evidence you have from the financial records to the video captured that night is more than enough to bring him to court and to keep him there. The room felt smaller, charged with possibility and fear. Tell me what I need to do, I said quietly. Danielle smiled, not a comforting smile, but a proud one. First, you'll file for an emergency protective order. With Aldridge's testimony and the footage, the judge won't hesitate. Then, we'll move for full custody. After that, we coordinate with federal agents to secure you a protected residence until trial. My breath shook. Protected, as in hidden? Yes, Aldridge said. Cole's associates can't be trusted. They may try to intimidate you, but once we expose his involvement in the illegal transfers, they'll let him burn. Victoria, who had been silent until then, stepped forward. What about me? Her voice trembled. If they know I helped, Aldridge cut her off gently. We'll protect you too. I watched Victoria closely. This woman who once saw me as an inconvenience now looked terrified, fragile, and yet something in her expression had shifted again. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was choosing a side. Danielle gathered the papers. The most important thing now is your statement. Not just about the assault, but about everything he's done over the years. His threats, his control, his violence. The courts need the full picture. My throat tightened. The full picture was ugly. I'll tell them everything, I whispered. Aldridge's gaze softened. Good. Because Cole has been lying for a long time. It's time the truth speaks louder. As Danielle prepared the forms, Victoria approached my bedside cautiously, as if afraid to break me. Lena, she said, if you want me to testify, I will. Her hands shook. I should have helped sooner. I won't make that mistake again. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. I would appreciate it. Aldridge slipped his phone into his pocket. Once you're discharged, we'll move you immediately. I've arranged a temporary apartment under an alias. No one except us will know where you are. For the first time since the attack, I exhaled fully. Safety felt foreign, but possible. But Danielle wasn't finished. She leaned forward slightly. One more thing. There's a hearing tomorrow morning. Cole's attorney is already trying to spin a narrative that you're unstable, emotional, exaggerating. My stomach dropped. Of course he is. A small smile curved Danielle's lips. Don't worry, I came prepared. Aldridge placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Tomorrow begins the end of his control. The nurse entered, adjusting my monitors. Outside, afternoon light spilled across the floor, and for the first time in months, I felt something grow inside me beside fear. The quiet, rising certainty that this time he would lose. The courthouse felt nothing like the hospital. The hospital held fear. This place held judgment. Cold, polished judgment wrapped in marble floors and echoing hallways. I sat between Aldridge and Danielle, my hands trembling in my lap, my baby shifting inside me, as if sensing the storm waiting behind the courtroom doors. Danielle adjusted her glasses, scanning the documents one last time. "Remember," she said softly, "you don't have to be perfect. You just have to tell the truth. Let them expose themselves." When the bailiff called our case, the double doors opened. And there he was. Cole, handcuffed, escorted by 2 officers, wearing the same smirk he used on me after every argument he won by force. His eyes landed on my stomach, then on my face, and he smiled as if he still owned me. Behind him trailed a sharply dressed attorney with a briefcase polished enough to reflect the overhead light's proof. Cole wasted no time hiring someone to spin his story. Ava was there too, seated in the back row. Her mascara was smudged, her posture stiff. She avoided Cole's eyes, but he didn't avoid hers. He glared at her with a promise of retaliation. She flinched. The judge entered, stern and unreadable. Cole's attorney stood immediately. "Your Honor, we contest the validity of the emergency protective order filed by Mrs. Hartman. She has a documented history of emotional instability, postpartum difficulties, delusional claims." Danielle rose so sharply her chair scraped the floor. "Objection. None of these allegations are supported by medical records. What is supported is a video showing Mr. Hartman ordering his mistress to physically assault his pregnant wife." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Cole stiffened, his attorney paling. The judge looked at him sharply. "Is that true, Mr. Hartman?" His lawyer stepped in. "The video is out of context." Danielle didn't miss a beat. "I invite the court to view the context." She handed over a drive, recorded by a third party who witnessed the entire event. Cole visibly swallowed. His mask cracked for a brief second, but his lawyer wasn't done. "Your Honor, the witness who recorded this, General Marcus Aldridge, is a retired military officer with ties to covert operations. His involvement raises questions about—" Aldridge stood slowly. The room inhaled. "My involvement raises one question only. Why Mr. Hartman was under active surveillance for ties to an illegal contractor network." His voice echoed with the authority of decades of command. "This court will find my credibility impeccable." The judge nodded with respect. The attorney sat down, defeated. Then it was my turn. Walking to the witness stand felt like walking into a spotlight I had never wanted. My knees shook as I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. When I sat, Danielle gave me the smallest reassuring nod. I took a breath. "Mrs. Hartman," she began gently, "in your own words, tell the court what happened in your home that evening." I looked at Cole. He stared back with eyes sharp enough to cut, so I looked away from him and told everything. The bruises, the threats, the financial control, the documents, Ava stepping on my belly, my baby screaming, my blood on the carpet, my fear that I might die holding my child. Somewhere behind me, Ava sobbed. Victoria too. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Then the judge spoke. "Mrs. Hartman, in light of the testimony and evidence presented, your request for a full protective order is granted, effective immediately." Cole jolted. "You can't do this." Officers tightened their grip on his arms. The judge continued, "And until further hearings, custody of the minor child remains solely with Mrs. Hartman. Mr. Hartman is prohibited from any contact." A gasp escaped me. For the first time, something felt real. Something felt possible. Cole lunged forward before the officers yanked him back. "Lena," he roared, "this isn't over." But it was Danielle who answered him, her voice ice cold. "Oh, it's very over." And as they dragged him toward the holding cells, I realized he wasn't shouting at me anymore. He was shouting at the future, slipping out of his hands. The days after the court hearing passed in a blur of exhaustion, fear, and something strange I hadn't felt in months possibility. When the hospital finally discharged me, Aldridge was waiting with a car idling at the curb. Danielle had already arranged everything. A temporary apartment under an alias, a new phone Cole couldn't track, a protective detail that rotated in shifts outside the building. I clutched my son against my chest as we drove through Manhattan, watching the skyline glimmer like a world I hadn't belonged to in a long time. The apartment was small, tucked inside a quiet building overlooking a narrow street. A furnished space with beige walls, a soft couch, a small kitchenette, and a window view that caught the light each morning. It was nothing like the cold luxury of the Hartman townhouse. This felt safe, honest. Mine? Aldridge helped carry in the bags Victoria had packed for me, baby clothes, toiletries, even a few of my books she'd salvaged from the house. He placed everything gently on the counter, then turned to me. "This is just temporary," he said, "but it's a step. A step." Such a small word for something that felt monumental. That first night, after the baby finally fell asleep, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back wasn't someone I immediately recognized. She was thinner, paler. Her eyes held the shadows of every bruise, every sleepless night, every whispered threat. But beneath all of that, she also held a faint spark. A stubborn little ember refusing to die. I touched the glass lightly. "We're still here," I whispered. The next morning, Danielle arrived with documents and a laptop. She set them on the table. "Today we start something new. Your statement wasn't just for court, it opened doors. There are support programs, financial assistance options, trauma counseling, but most importantly, we need to get you stable enough to face trial." Stable. Another small, heavy word. She taught me how to document everything, every medical check, every message from law enforcement, every small recovery milestone. "Paper trails protect survivors," she said, tapping the folder gently. "Especially survivors like you." Aldridge stopped by each day, never staying too long, just long enough to check on the baby, to make sure the building felt secure, to ask if I needed anything. He had a way of standing guard without making me feel watched. A protector, not a shadow. Sometimes he brought groceries, sometimes he brought updates on Cole's case, and sometimes on the days when I felt particularly fragile, he simply said, "You're doing better than you think." But healing wasn't linear. Some nights, I jolted awake, convinced Cole was in the hallway. Other nights, I cried so quietly I almost fooled myself. I jumped when a door slammed. I checked the locks 5 times before bed. I kept my son nestled against me at all hours. Still, strength grows in silence. I started journaling again, writing down small victories. I ate full meals. I slept more than 3 hours at a time. I felt the baby move strong, determined, alive. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the apartment gold, I sat on the couch with my hand on my belly. My son babbled on the floor beside me. It was the first time the room felt warm. Aldridge stood near the window, watching the street below. "You're rebuilding," he said quietly. I looked up at him. "Some days I don't feel like it." He shook his head. "That's the thing about rebuilding. You don't feel it happening until suddenly, you're standing on solid ground again." His words settled over me like a blanket. But just as my heart began to steady, Danielle entered with news that stole the breath from the room. "They're moving, Cole," she said. "And he's asking to speak. Not to the court, not to investigators." She turned to me. "He asked to speak to you, Lena." My blood ran cold. And in that moment, I realized the past wasn't done with me yet. When Danielle delivered the news that Cole wanted to speak to me, I felt the world tilt, as if gravity itself paused to watch my reaction. My heart slammed against my ribs, sharp and uneven. "No," I whispered instantly. "Absolutely not." The thought of hearing his voice again made the hairs on my arms rise, but Danielle didn't look convinced. "I agree you shouldn't be anywhere near him physically," she said, setting her briefcase on the table. "But you need to understand something, Lena. When abusers start losing power, they get desperate, and desperation creates opportunity." Aldridge stepped closer, arms crossed, jaw tight. "You don't have to talk to him. Not now, not ever." His voice carried steel, but underneath it was something almost protective. This could be an intimidation attempt, or a trap. I swallowed hard. "Then why is he asking for me?" Danielle exhaled slowly. "Because you're the only thing he can still reach. Legally, financially, physically, he's blocked. But psychologically, he knows your heartbreak. He knows your fears. He wants to exploit them." My stomach twisted. Aldridge added, or he thinks he can manipulate you into retracting something, changing your story, showing weakness. His eyes darkened. He doesn't realize this isn't the same Lena he used to control. I didn't feel strong enough to be that Lena, but I wanted to be. Danielle opened her laptop, clicking through case files. The federal team thinks he might talk if he believes you'll listen. Men like Cole often confess without realizing they're confessing. If he's desperate enough, he may expose details about Red Meridian details we need. So they want to use me, I whispered. No, Aldridge said sharply. We use him. He pulled a chair beside me, lowering himself so we were at eye level. Lena, you won't be alone. We'll be there. A secure video call, monitored, recorded. He won't know we're on the other side, and he won't see you if you don't want him to. My pulse slowed slightly. I won't have to speak? Not unless you want to, Danielle said. Just hearing his voice might be enough to catch him slipping. Silence fell. Heavy, thick, filled with echoes of memories I didn't want. Finally I asked, when? Danielle closed the laptop gently. Tomorrow morning. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to my son breathe softly beside me. Every creak of the apartment made my muscles tighten. Every shadow reminded me of Cole, as if he could slip through walls, as if he would always find me. Around 3 a.m., I rose and padded quietly to the kitchen. Aldridge was there, sitting at the small table with a cup of black coffee, wearing the same calm concentration he had in battle. He looked up as if he'd been waiting. Couldn't sleep? He asked softly. No. I sank into the chair across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I whispered, what if hearing his voice breaks me again? Aldridge shook his head. No, it won't break you. It will show you how far you've come. I studied him. You sound certain. I am. His voice was steady, unshakable. You survived him when you were alone, scared, and unprotected. Now you have a legal team, a protective detail, and me. That's not the same battlefield. My throat tightened. I looked down at my hands. What if he says something that makes me doubt myself again? Aldridge leaned forward, placing a hand gently over mine, a gesture both grounding and warm. Then remember this. He's a man in a cage, trying to rattle the bars. You're the one walking free. A breath I didn't know I'd been holding escaped me. As dawn crept into the apartment, soft and pink, Aldridge stood and said, get some rest. Tomorrow, we face him. And tomorrow, he loses something bigger than freedom. I swallowed. What? Aldridge's eyes narrowed. Control. And I didn't know it then, but the call that awaited me would reveal a truth so shocking it would change the course of the entire case and expose the final secret Cole never intended anyone to know. The conference room they placed me in the next morning was small, quiet, and unbearably bright. A single laptop sat on the table, its screen already open to the secure video call platform the federal agents had arranged. My pulse fluttered like a trapped bird inside my chest. Aldridge stood behind me with his hands folded, silent but steady. Danielle sat to my right, adjusting her earpiece, her expression razor-focused, the kind of sharp attention that could slice through lies like paper. A federal agent leaned in. Audio only, he won't see you. When you're ready, nod. Ready. The word meant nothing. There was no ready for this. But I nodded anyway. The agent clicked a button. Static crackled. Then a breath. Then him. Lena? His voice crawled through the speakers like a familiar poison. My hands tightened around the arms of the chair. Even without seeing his face, I felt him towering over me again. Lena, I know you're there. Don't let them play you. Don't let them twist everything. Danielle pressed a finger to her lips, reminding me not to speak. Not yet. Cole exhaled shakily. I need you to listen. Red Meridian is going to pin everything on me. You don't understand what they're capable of, what I did for them, what they owe me. You're safer with me than against me. A ridiculous laugh tried to escape my lips. Safer? My stomach still held the echo of Ava's shoe. He continued, voice low, almost conspiratorial. You think Aldridge cares about you? You think he just stumbled into your life? No. He's been watching me for years. He used you. He used us. That video? That was staged. He set me up. Aldridge stiffened behind me, but Danielle lifted a hand, signaling him to stay silent. Cole's breathing grew frantic. You need to retract your statement. Tell them you were emotional. Tell them you misunderstood. If you do that, I can negotiate. I can fix this. For the kids. For us. The kids. Plural. Hearing him say it made bile rise in my throat. Then his tone shifted, slick, dripping with the charm he weaponized so well. Lena, sweetheart, you know me. You know I love you. You know I'd never hurt you. That night was an accident. You panicked. You fell. Ava misread the moment. Danielle rolled her eyes so hard the air shifted. But then something changed. Cole's voice cracked. You think I wanted to be like him? He snapped suddenly. You think I wanted to become my father? You have no idea what they made me do. What Aldridge let happen. What he signed off on. His breathing heaved. I didn't have a choice. Aldridge leaned in, murmuring to the federal agent, "Record that. Every word." Cole kept spiraling, unraveling like a thread pulled too tight. If Red Meridian goes down, I go down. And if I go down, they'll come for you, for the baby, for everything. You don't know the things I saw, the things I moved, the people I had to. He stopped, abruptly, as if realizing he'd said too much. Then he whispered, "Lena, please, please, I'm begging you, don't let them bury me." His voice trembled. That was new. Cole didn't tremble. Silence stretched thin across the room. Danielle tapped the table, signaling me. I swallowed, then spoke a single sentence, my first words to him since the night that nearly killed me. "You buried yourself." Cole inhaled sharply. "Lena." But I wasn't done. "My children will never know you," I said, voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "Not as a father, not as a man, not even as a memory." A choked noise slipped through the speakers, rage or despair, I couldn't tell. Then the line cut. The room exhaled. The agent removed his headset. That was enough. More than enough. He incriminated himself on multiple counts. Danielle allowed herself a small, victorious smile. He just accelerated his own conviction. Aldridge placed a warm, steady hand on my shoulder. "You did well." I wasn't sure if "well" covered the earthquake inside my body, but I nodded. Because in that moment, I realized the man who once controlled my life had just handed me the key to ending his. The gala at the Plaza Hotel shimmered with gold light, crystal chandeliers, and the murmurs of New York's wealthiest philanthropists, CEOs, retired officers, and government officials. It was supposed to be a fundraising event for families of fallen service members. But for Aldridge, Danielle, and the federal team, it was something more. It was the perfect stage, the perfect audience, the perfect trap. Aldridge insisted I attend not as bait, not as a symbol, but as someone reclaiming her life. Standing in a room he can't enter, he told me, is its own kind of victory. I wore a simple black dress that draped gently over my belly, my hair pulled back, my son safe with a vetted sitter upstairs. For the first time, when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman rising, not just surviving, but beneath the elegance of the ballroom was tension, alive and crackling like electricity in the walls. Cole's confession during the call had set everything into motion. Red Meridian operatives panicked. Agents intercepted encrypted messages. And tonight, federal prosecutors and high-ranking officials were gathered under one roof, ready for the final revelation Aldridge planned. As I stepped into the ballroom, conversations paused. People recognized Aldridge immediately. Some saluted, others shook his hand. He guided me toward a table near the stage, a place of honor I didn't feel ready for. "Lena," he said quietly, "tonight is about truth taking its place." But truth rarely arrives quietly. Halfway through the evening, as the band paused and the lights dimmed, Aldridge walked onto the stage. The room silenced instantly. His presence commanded attention not with theatrics, but with unshakable authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "tonight we gather to honor courage, not just on the battlefield, but in the quiet corners of homes where danger hides behind familiar faces." My breath caught. He was talking about me. "For months, we have been investigating an illegal contractor network known as Red Meridian," he continued, scanning the room. "A network responsible for weapon trafficking, coercion, and violent intimidation. Tonight, that network collapses." A ripple of shock whispered across the room. Danielle stood at our table, ready. Aldridge lifted a small remote. The screen behind him illuminated, showing documents, financial transfers, and then the audio recording of Cole's confession. A collective gasp spread. Cole's voice echoed through the grand ballroom. "If Red Meridian goes down, I go down. They'll come for you. You don't know the things I saw, the things I moved. People turned, murmuring in outrage. Ava was there too, invited by Danielle. She sat frozen, mascara trembling, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles blanched. When Cole's voice admitted everything, she broke into silent tears. Shame, grief, clarity, all crashing at once. Then Aldridge spoke the words that sealed everything. Cole Hartman is no longer simply in custody. As of 1 hour ago, federal warrants were executed across 5 states. Red Meridian's leadership has been dismantled, and Mr. Hartman's role within the organization is fully exposed. A wave of applause erupted, not polite applause, but fierce, righteous triumph. People stood. Some shouted approval. The truth had been caged too long. I felt my knees weaken as tears filled my eyes, not of sorrow, but release. Aldridge continued, "But there is another kind of courage. The courage of a woman who survived what no one should. The courage of a mother who protected her children. The courage of someone who chose truth despite the cost." My heart pounded. He gestured toward me. "Tonight, we honor Lena Hartman." For a moment, the ballroom spun. Then applause filled it again, louder, brighter, stronger. People turned to me with admiration instead of pity. Danielle squeezed my shoulder. Victoria wiped tears from the corner of her eyes. Even Ava, trembling in the back, whispered an apology I couldn't hear. It wasn't validation. It wasn't praise. It was reclamation. But just as the applause swelled, an agent rushed toward Aldridge with a hurried whisper. He stiffened. Something was wrong. He stepped off stage, leaned close to Danielle, and said 3 words that froze my blood. He escaped custody. The room blurred. My chest tightened. Cole was free. And somewhere in this city, he was coming. Panic swept through the ballroom like a cold wind. Conversations halted mid-sentence, champagne flutes trembled, and a ripple of fear spread across glittering gowns and polished tuxedos. Cole Hartman, handcuffed, cornered, exposed, had slipped through federal custody, and every instinct in my body screamed the same thing. He's coming for me. Aldridge moved first. "Danielle, get her upstairs, now." His voice cracked like a command on a battlefield. Agents surged into formation around our table, forming a protective circle as Danielle grabbed my arm and guided me through a side hallway. My heart thudded in my ears. The baby inside me shifted, reacting to my terror. Victoria followed close behind, breathless. "He won't get near her," she whispered, as if trying to convince herself too. We reached the elevator. Agents checked the hallway, then ushered us inside. As the doors slid shut, Danielle placed both hands on my shoulders. "Listen to me. He's desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. We're not the ones in danger. Here he is." But I knew she said it to keep me steady. The truth was written in her eyes. Cole had nothing left to lose. When the doors opened to the private suite floor, agents positioned themselves at every exit. The sitter handed me my son, his tiny face scrunched in confusion. I held him tightly, breathing in his warmth to fight the rising dread. A loud bang echoed down the hallway. Victoria gasped. "Oh God." But it wasn't Cole. A moment later, Aldridge appeared, breath controlled but expression thunderous. He never reached the hotel. Satellite picked up his license plate miles away. "He's fleeing the city." Relief washed over me, brief, fragile, before Aldridge added, "But he made a call." Danielle's eyes narrowed. "To who?" Aldridge hesitated. "To someone inside Red Meridian, someone who wants him silenced permanently." A chill shot through me. Cole wasn't hunting me. He was being hunted. "Federal teams intercepted the call," Aldridge continued. "They're tracking him now. He won't make it far." He stepped closer. "Lena, this ends tonight." Hours crawled by. My son slept in my arms. Victoria sat praying softly. Danielle paced with her phone glued to her ear. Aldridge stood by the window, watching the Manhattan skyline as if reading the future through its lights. Then, at 2:17 a.m., Aldridge's phone vibrated. He answered, listened, said nothing. Finally, he hung up and turned toward me. "It's over." I swallowed hard. "What happened?" He took a breath. Cole attempted to cross a construction barrier on the Queensboro Bridge. He was speeding. Too fast. He lost control. The car plunged off the edge. My lungs locked. He didn't survive the impact. A single moment stretched in the room, silent, suspended, heavy. Victoria covered her mouth, tears streaking down her cheeks. Danielle exhaled shakily. Aldridge lowered his head. And me? I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel sorrow. I felt release deep and bone level, as if a noose I'd worn for years had finally snapped. Aldridge stepped closer. Lena, you're free, truly free. The words didn't feel real until my son stirred in my arms, as if sensing the world had changed. In the months that followed, healing wasn't a straight line, it was a gentle climb. The case closed. Red Meridian fell. Victoria became a steady presence, rebuilding alongside me. Danielle helped secure compensation, custody, and peace. I moved into a sunlit apartment overlooking the river mine, legally and emotionally. And Aldridge? He didn't disappear. He visited often, checked on us, guided quietly, until checking became staying, and staying became something softer, warmer, unexpected. One evening, as the sun dipped pink behind Manhattan, he stood beside me on the balcony. "You rebuilt a life from ashes," he said. "That's courage most people never find." I looked at him steadfast, loyal, patient, and felt something open in my chest. "Maybe," I said softly, "I didn't rebuild it alone." He smiled, gently. "No, but you chose every step." And as my son laughed in the next room and the city lights flickered like promises, I realized my story didn't end with survival. It began with freedom. And finally, love had a place to grow. And just like that, our story comes to a close, my wonderful friends. If you're still here with me at this very moment, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in its own quiet, personal way. So now, let's breathe together and look at this story from a different angle, your angle. What Lena's journey teaches us is simple but powerful. Pain can break you, yes, but it can also shape you. The Stoics said, "The obstacle is the way." Marcus Aurelius reminded us that every challenge life gives is also an invitation to rise. Lena didn't choose her suffering, but she chose her response and found freedom, strength, and love on the other side. Maybe you're carrying your own battles right now. Maybe you've been afraid, unheard, or underestimated. Remember, you are not defined by what hurt you, but by how you rise after it. Healing isn't loud, it's a quiet decision, repeated every day, to keep moving forward. If this story gave you even a little courage, a little clarity, or a little warmth, then don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, share it with someone who needs hope tonight. And subscribe to the channel so we can continue walking through these stories and these lessons together. You're not alone, and your comeback is already unfolding.